We don't want to be giving someone less than favorable feedback. But I want you to understand that evaluation is not a criticism. Evaluation is actually feedback. And in giving the person feedback, it helps them to learn and grow. So this presentation today, oh, right. Do you remember why we joined Toastmasters?
Yes.
Yes, it is because, why? Tell me. A better speaker, a better leader. We want to gain some of those speaking and leadership skills. It was to meet a specific need. Some of us join Toastmasters because we want to then move on to gaining material rewards. We want to earn the credit. We want to look good at our jobs. Some of us do it for pleasure. Many of us do it to gain confidence and to build self-esteem, but also to get self-esteem, to get esteem and to be held in high regard by others. So today, we're going to be looking at functions of evaluation, methods for effective delivery. We're going to talk about how we can evaluate effectively, and we'll then have a discussion on the sandwich technique and how to pull an evaluation together. So, Toastmasters does not have, it's not a formal learning like a classroom. How we structure the Toastmaster program is that you prepare with your mentor. Everyone has a mentor. Every club uses the mentorship program. So you prepare with your mentor, and then you present your speech in the club setting, and you then get feedback from an evaluator. So the importance I want you to consider then is how we improve as speakers is that the evaluation is actually the source of the information for us to improve. We read the manual, we work with our mentors, and we do something, but that's what we understand. The evaluation then gives us the information that we need to improve. And at the end of the day, I want you to know that the ultimate responsibility for your progress as a speaker, as a Toastmaster, is up to you. It's not your mentor, it's not your evaluator, it's not the club president or the BTA. The responsibility lies with you. So an evaluator has 3 roles. First of all, the evaluator is a motivator. So the evaluator gets to say, good job. Clearly you understood the objective. You must have done some preparation. This is, of course, if they've done preparation. You can't say that if the project shows that they did no presentation. Preparation. They did the presentation, but without the preparation. The evaluator motivates the person to acknowledge their strengths and to take on their areas of weakness as they move forward on the next project. The evaluator is also a facilitator. The speaker needs to know that they can improve. No one comes being able to speak perfectly or excellently every time. So therefore, every time you make your presentation, you're going to get feedback, and the evaluator gives you that information so that you can put it into practice for your next presentation. The evaluator, therefore, gives ways to improve the presentation. It's inappropriate for an evaluator to say to someone, that was just terrible. I can't even think how you could make it better. If an evaluator does that in your club, don't have them evaluate ever again. They are terrible, and the person to whom they would have given that evaluation is going to feel dreadful and have not come back. I've actually seen that happen, where someone avoided coming to Toastmasters meetings and making future presentations because of an acerbic evaluation that didn't offer them any areas that they could improve, any tangible tips to improve. An evaluator is also a counselor, and this is the one that I love the most, because especially if your Toastmaster is someone who is fearful or doesn't understand or feels really insecure, has low self-esteem, then you get to be the counselor who brings them along so that they will come back and make presentations time and time again. If we don't do that, if we don't say to them, come back, I'll be there with you when you come to do your project again. Please, rethink this skill and come back and tell me when you're doing it. I'll be there. That's what an evaluator does to ensure that the Toastmaster in training really chooses to keep presenting the presentation. their presentation. But I want you to know that the evaluation doesn't only benefit the speaker. It's clear what the benefits of the speakers are. That's what we've been talking about for the last few minutes. It helps build their self-esteem. It gives them immediate feedback so that they can incorporate the feedback into their next presentation. An evaluation also benefits the evaluator. How do you think it benefits the evaluator? But as someone who loves to evaluate,
it helps develop your critical thinking skills.
Critical thinking skills. It helps with your impromptu speaking. It helps with your listening skills. An evaluator has to listen, figure out which things are the most important ones to talk about in that moment, which ones you might want to say when you come to the front of the room to evaluate, which ones you might want to speak to the speaker after the meeting. So your critical skills. It also helps you to really build positive relationships, especially if you're someone who doesn't like to give, say, negative feedback. You get to learn that skill, and it helps not only in your Toastmaster experience. I'm promising you it helps in your work because you have to give feedback to your boss and to people, your colleagues. It helps you at home with your spouse. It helps you with your children. It helps you at church. So it really, being able to hear something and give objective feedback using your analytical and critical thinking skills will benefit you in many, many ways. And as I said, I think for me, evaluation helps with the impromptu speaking because you listen to the speech and then you make a little mini speech. You have 3 minutes to give your evaluation, but you have to organize that. So, but it's not like you have a week and a half to give feedback at the next meeting. You have to give feedback perhaps 15 or 20 minutes later. So it really helps you to develop those in those moments when you don't have a lot of time for preparation. And finally, the evaluation also benefits the club. It benefits the club because the club builds that atmosphere of trust and camaraderie where everyone will want to come in and make presentations because it's such a warm and comforting environment. It allows the club members to find role models in the club. But what it does for many persons sitting in the audience is it validates or helps them to understand what was happening. It either validates what they were thinking. When the evaluator comes up and says, your body language could have been more robust, to make eye contact, this is what you need to do. That's something everyone in the room can use when they're making their presentation. But it says to them, I felt the same way. I felt the speaker wasn't speaking to me. He was only focusing on that side, and the evaluator said that as well. When the evaluator says something that you may not have picked up or agree with, you then get an explanation, and you can go to the evaluator at the end of the meeting and say, I didn't understand what you were saying. And so therefore it actually helps you, even though you didn't make the presentation. This is not a good reason to not make presentations. You can't always learn from other people's evaluations. You're not improving, but it does help you as you prepare your evaluation. I may also say that good evaluations, when they're delivered in the club setting, actually keeps people in clubs. I can't tell you how many times I've been to clubs, whether my club or I'm visiting a club, and the visitor says, the evaluation was so helpful. I learned when I was in this meeting. So it helps at many, many levels. So self-esteem, I said, is one of the reasons that we need to be good with Toastmasters. And Toastmasters allows us to have the self-esteem being built upon. It fuels personal growth. It gives feedback for growth. It builds self-confidence. And then when you start seeing yourself as someone who's successful as a speaker, it means you can start paying it forward. So you will then start volunteering with your VPN to be a mentor, to deliver evaluations, because you know how evaluations help you become a better speaker. But in order to do it, in order to nourish self-esteem, your evaluations have to be genuine. If someone comes up and they deliver half-hearted weak presentation and you come here and you say, oh, that was excellent, that's the best thing I've ever heard. Everybody in the club knows that you're just whitewashing
That's right.
the presentation. Everybody in the club knows that that's not a good thing. And so if you're not, and the person speaking, I think, would feel much more insulted than they would feel that they were being complimented, because they know it wasn't necessarily a wonderful evaluation. So you have to be genuine. You must recognize strength. There's never been a speech that I've seen that doesn't have strength. Even if there were many, many, many areas for improvement, there was something that would have had strength. You need to recognize improvement, and this is especially useful in your club where you see a speaker all the time and you can note the progress and change over time. A climate of motivation in the club will serve to function to nourish self-esteem, because people will want to make presentations because they know you avoid value judgment. You should have done this, or good speakers do that, or I don't agree and therefore that was good. No, we don't. We're not talking about whether we agree with the speech or not, or the position. We can still evaluate the speech even if we don't agree with the position that the person has taken. And an effective evaluation will also provide a positive direction for the speaker to move forward. So in Toastmasters, we speak of three main evaluation methods. The first is the tell and step. That's the one that we use mostly in the club, when the evaluator listens to the speech and then comes to the lectern during the evaluation segment of the meeting. And the evaluator will say, here are my thoughts, here's what worked, here are the areas for improvement, this is what I really like, and then the person will take on some of the things. We call it, in Toastmasters, the technique we use is the sandwich technique, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We also have two other techniques. The first is the tell and listen, where I say something as the evaluator, and the person being evaluated speaks back. In doing this, the speaker is given an opportunity to respond, perhaps to explain, to ensure that there's full understanding of the purpose of choosing a particular speech format, and so on. And often this happens after the formal evaluation session, when the evaluator and the speaker meet after the meeting to have a one-on-one debrief. So the evaluator, the speaker might then say, I noticed you said this, could you, but that's what I was trying to achieve was that, and then the evaluator gets a better understanding. The third technique is, I think, the most difficult, but perhaps the most useful, is where you use a problem-solving technique, where there's a conversation happening, but the speaker gets to see if they can understand what was happening. Now, that is almost impossible in our sandwich technique methodology, and I've rarely ever seen an evaluator come to the lectern and use that, even though I have seen it in other settings, in a work setting. But the idea is the speaker shares a concern, asks questions, and the speaker says, yes, I did that well, or I didn't meet the objective, perhaps I could have done this instead, and then the evaluator would affirm their feedback or until they're at one. So everybody gets three methods: the tell and tell, which is what we use mostly and we're going to talk about from this point forward, the tell and listen, and the problem solving. Do you have any questions or thoughts on that?
I did a speech yesterday, and when the speech was being evaluated, I initially asked the meeting for their no, what happened, I did a presentation, but when I came to the office, the projector that I was supposed to use was locked up, and we couldn't get it, and I asked the meeting, because my presentation was based on using a projector, but I wanted them to see some of the things I'm trying to bring out, something to do with crime and violence and all of that. And they gave me the permission to present it out, the PowerPoint. But while I was being evaluated, I went over like 4 seconds over the half an hour extra. Or for the evaluator said that it would have been okay, she wasn't going to allow it. But then she did a presentation. When she did a presentation, she said that based on the guidelines in the book, she thought that the presentation was well done, etc. But then she went on to say she can't promote me to the other fields because I did not have the PowerPoint project, which would have been useful. And I said, but that's not fair because I asked the meeting for permission if they think I should.
Was it the project I'm using visual aids?
And then I don't remember about that part, but based on
what project were you doing? What project was
that? Was number 7. Number 7.
Which is using visual aids.
Research topic.
So I said, no, I'm not going to do it over.
Okay, well, I think that gives us an opportunity to talk about the whole idea of an evaluation and whether or not someone can say that you can or cannot advance to the next project. And for Toastmasters International, the rule is that once you've done the presentation, you get the feedback, you can move on to the next topic. In many of our clubs, we've adopted a higher standard that says, if your evaluator doesn't think that you've mastered the skills that you're supposed to be learning, they can recommend that you redo the project. And that's been a fairly accepted practice for us, and we abide by it. However, you don't have to stand by what that evaluator says. Once you've presented the topic, you can move on to the next one. So you get to choose at this point.
And you can vote. That most persons said they thought that we just move on.
But you get to choose. The point is you get to choose. But in the evaluator's opinion, the presentation would have been much better. And it is my opinion that if your evaluator says, I think you need to redo this to ensure that you master the skills, given that we joined Toastmasters to learn skills, there would be no harm in redoing the project. There have been times when I felt that I've been asked to redo something and I feel I mastered the objectives and I reluctantly go and do the project again. And it's definitely, I could see the difference, my own growth in just having heard the feedback and recrafted the presentation and re-delivered it. So there's no harm in doing it again. You get to do what you choose. So there's no harm in doing it again if you feel that it might enhance your growth and development. Yeah. So I would like to talk now about the sandwich technique, because for many of us, the sandwich technique is something that we don't always follow in an evaluation. And when we're hearing people evaluating not using the sandwich technique, it's not as elegant as it could be. So with the sandwich technique, we start with something positive. You give the areas for improvement with the recommendations in the middle, and then you end on a positive note. The reason being, the person receiving the evaluation hears the positive and the negative at the end, and they've made notes of the things that they need to do differently the next time. Yes? So it's a very encouraging and positive way to give feedback.
You mentioned positive at the end.
I say positive.
You mentioned positive at the end.
Thank you. Sometimes we use the club sandwich technique, which is where we have a positive, an area for improvement, a positive, an area for improvement, a positive, an area. That gets just so tiring. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work for the people receiving the evaluation. It might work for you as the evaluator, but I'm going to assert that that's because you're being a little bit lazy in not preparing your evaluations and presenting it well. When we use the club sandwich technique, you must give the areas for improvement with recommendations. So I recall a situation where I fiddled. When I do my speeches, when I started, I used to do this a lot. I used to fiddle with my ring. And my evaluator said, it's very distracting when you stand up here doing, like this. I used to, with the ring. And my evaluator said, Bridget, why don't you just not wear the ring? It was like, what? Why don't I not wear the ring? Not?
It's okay.
why don't I not wear my ring? And from that point forward, whenever I was going to do a presentation, I would take off my ring. So therefore, I didn't have anything to fiddle with, so I got out of the habit of fiddling. Now I can wear any number of rings on my fingers, and I don't fiddle with them because I've gotten out of the habit because of that one feedback that I got. So it pointed out the area of concern, but gave me a very specific recommendation that I could try, that then transformed a distracting habit into other distracting habits. So, let us talk about some behaviors of an effective evaluator. So this is the meat of the matter in terms of, for the last 20 minutes we've spoken about why we should evaluate and how good evaluators can help a lot. This is now the how-to of doing evaluation. And remember, we're using the sandwich technique, but these are now some behaviors. The first thing you need to do is to show that you care. An evaluator who comes up to the lectern and goes, yeah, you gave a speech, whatever, and I think you could do it. Do you care? Do you care what I'm going to say from that point forward? Because clearly, I'm there for some reason other than for your growth and development. There's some other reason, or else my mother quarreled with me that morning, or my husband, or somebody, and I'm taking it out on you. So you need to show that you care, and the way that you do that is you ensure that you adopt a professional approach to giving the evaluation, but that you actually care. You create that you care. And if there's someone speaking and you don't like them and you don't think you can do that, then decline to do that evaluation. But once you've accepted it, you have a responsibility to ensure that you give it the best that you can do in that moment. You need to suit your evaluation to your speaker. and I love this one because I get asked a lot of questions on this. But some people can take a more robust consideration from the lectern than someone else can. Also, some people, whether it's because of delicate egos or they're shy or they think they know everything already, like there are lots of personalities in your club, you need to know that so that when you're doing the evaluation, you can ensure that you speak to that person's reality. You know, they say that you have to meet someone where they are, if you're then going to bring them to where you want them to be. That's what this means. It doesn't mean that you lie or that you don't tell the truth or that you varnish or skip over anything. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you need to ensure that when you speak to someone, you speak in a way that they can receive it. Make sense? Mm-hmm.
I have a concern about that second point. Reason being, even though the evaluator is speaking to the presenter, the other person is in the room. So if they hear that robust present or evaluation, as you said earlier, it might cause them not to want to speak if that's the experience.
Well, robust doesn't mean unkind. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean untrue or harsh. It just means you can say more, perhaps give more advice, perhaps ask them to do more of it, ask them for some feedback and talk. If the person can manage it, sometimes I'll ask the room, did you get to know the speaker? And the room says, yes, we did. You know, if someone is doing their first speech. But I may not do that if I take the person. Suppose we didn't get to know the speaker. And the person might feel a little awkward if someone says, no, I really learned nothing. Then I wouldn't do that. So that, makes sense? So it's not that you're harsh or that you lie, because you also don't want to say, well, that was really nice, this is a good try. Because the other people in the room will be like, oh, well, that sounded like rubbish, I can come and do rubbish too. So you don't want that.
I'd like to share that one of the ways to get around that, or for it to be meaningful, is to speak with your evaluator before the presentation.
Yeah.
And even if you could get the opportunity to present the speech and say to the evaluator, here are the areas of concern for me, or I'd like you to look out for. and therefore you would have had an input in it, and therefore when you get the information, you will be able to receive it in a genuine way.
And even more than that, I'm going to talk about it at the end, is you need to make sure that you and your evaluator are on the same page. Because say, for example, the project on visual aids, I remember someone doing that project and it said use 2 visual aids. So the person has 2 parts of a PowerPoint, in the PowerPoint. So, they had this one and then another one. And that's not what the evaluator interpreted 2 visual aids to mean. And so therefore the feedback was you didn't meet the objectives because you only used 1 visual aid in the PowerPoint. You didn't use 2 different types of visual aids. So speaking with the evaluator beforehand to ensure that you're on the same page is also going to be critical. But also, you get to show your fairs and stuff to your evaluator as well, so they know what area you're working on.
You may also, another interpretation of that second point is so that as a more experienced speaker, you can evaluate a little differently as opposed to a newbie.
Yes, thank you so much, Essie. Because what it means is someone doing their second presentation, you evaluate them differently. You won't evaluate body language for their second presentation because they haven't gotten to that skill yet. But someone on their 8th presentation, you want to ensure that they're using all the techniques that they've learned thus far, even as they're trying to master a new skill for Project 8. Thanks, Essie. You need to learn the speaker's objective, which is what we were talking about. You had said the speaker should speak to the evaluator, but the evaluator also needs to understand what the speaker is about. The speaker may say, I'm working on vocal variety, but I also have a keen interest in mastering or rethinking, organizing the speech. So could you have a special look for that? So you ask, is there anything special that you're working on? You need to listen actively. How many of us have been at the lectern where we're delivering a presentation, and even though we're not supposed to do this, I'm not advocating this as a best practice, but we do tend to have a little glance at the person we know who's evaluating us from time to time. Don't? You want to just make sure. And you see your evaluator like this. Like, really? What do you do? Yeah, it would be discouraging. That must be so discouraging. So you need to listen. And evaluators, I ask you to also participate. If the speaker says, how many of you have done so and so? Just put up your hand, even if you do it or not. Because the person's speech may depend on someone having put up their hand to move on. That helps them to be the best speaker that they can be. And you do that by listening and participating in the presentation. And I bet you when you then come to deliver your evaluation, the speaker will actually hear what you're saying because they know that you participated in their speech. You need to also take notes. None of us can remember a 5 to 7 minute speech and all the different aspects of the speech in our head. So, but don't take so many notes that all you're doing is just writing. And the speaker is like, oh my God, it was so bad. Because the evaluator is just writing notes. Take your notes. Remember the errors, especially note elegant use of language or that beautiful turn of phrase or the concern that you had about their organization or the segues that they use. Write it down. But remember, when they're finished speaking, you can then go back real quick and fill in some of the blanks. So you don't, if you keep writing all the time and never look at the speaker and you're just writing, that's also very discouraging for a speaker. I need you to also personalize your language.
Sorry, Bridget. We have a question from Vernicia Brooks. When an evaluator knows you very well, how can their evaluation be effective?
When an evaluator knows you very well, they give the best evaluation ever, often, or not. It will be effective because they know where you're coming from, where you're going. They recognize some of your crutches or your nervous habits, and they can actually, someone else may see someone at the lectern and leaning like this and think it's just a crutch and they're being irresponsible. But for someone who knows you well, they may know that you have a sprained left foot, and that's why you're favoring the left foot. So they can take those things into account. But an evaluator is expected to remain impartial for this presentation. But my advice to, what's her name, Bernice? Bernicia. If you have that concern, then ask that that person not evaluate you. And I especially suggest that we never have mentors evaluating mentees, because I'm mentoring you, I'm giving you advice and feedback and making suggestions, and you go up there and you don't deliver what we agreed. You're down. That's it. End of chat. But your presentation may have actually been excellent, even though you forgot to add in that paragraph or you failed to do something. So you should try and have someone who doesn't know exactly what you're doing help do the evaluation. But if someone knows you well, my sister is a Toastmaster, and I think I give her fairly good evaluation because I know I want to say to my sister, jump up and down and become more exuberant and lively. My sister will never do that. So why would I say that to her in an evaluation? When I'm giving her feedback, I need to know that that's not who she is, but this was excellent body language, regardless of the fact that she didn't use her hands like this. True? So I don't know if that helps.
She said yes, it was helpful. Thank you.
So personalize your language. In Toastmasters, in any speaking setting, in any feedback setting, there's often a temptation to call upon the authority, and the evaluator is not that authority. The evaluator can say, I liked your presentation, not you did a good presentation. Because I don't know if you like, did you like it? Did you like it? I don't know. But for me, this is how I felt. When you told me the story of skipping stones under the tree, I felt like I was with you on your summer vacation. So you personalize your language because it's my reaction, my feedback to your presentation. I can draw conclusions as well. So I don't get to say, it was obvious that you were nervous. Really? Really? Like, to who? You know? For me, it occurred for me, it appeared to me that you were nervous. Perhaps if you're very nervous, one of the ways you can control your nerves would be to do something different. And you give them a recommendation. But always, it's my reaction. Or I felt that you didn't use the best segues. Segues were choppy. We can work on that. Make sense? Yes. Don't ever say, fail to do that, and your opening was weak. Really? I get to say, the opening didn't pull me in. For me, the opening didn't set the stage for the rest of your presentation. But I don't get to judge and say the opening was weak. If I hear any of you doing that, I will come to wherever you are and let all the air out of your time. In Jamaica. Another way that we can do the personalize is when we're making a recommendation. The temptation would be to say, you should do this, you must do that, or good speakers will always do this. No, that doesn't work for me, because what works for this speaker may not work for that speaker, or what works for this presentation may not work for that presentation. What you can say is, I suggest, I think your next speech will make a greater impact if, a technique I have found helpful is, and I use that one a lot. A technique I found helpful, like I share that story of me and Colette with the ring every time I see someone fiddling and being nervous. Another evaluation that I got had to do with my hands and the pockets and so on. And I say, when I just started out, I used to do this, and my good friend Essie shared with me that here's how I could control my hands instead. You can clasp them in front of you like this. So it's not me being an expert, but it's me sharing the wisdom that I've learned with you so that you can have that wisdom for the future. I find that to be a very effective way. I also suggest, I also suggest that you laugh at yourself a bit as well. If the speaker was nervous or forgot their lines, you can say, like I get to say this. I remember being in a speech competition and remember? And like being there, ready to deliver. And then I forgot my line. And I remember looking up in the audience at one of the judges, and he looked at me and he said, so if I can get over that in a speech competition, then you can get over it in your success. So by sharing those personal things and being willing to be vulnerable, I think makes a difference for people receiving evaluation. So that's the personalizing. Any thoughts, questions, comments? Great. Move on. We need to give positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement means that the person speaking knows that their efforts were worthwhile in doing the preparation for the project, to know that they're making progress in their speaking skills, to know that they've accomplished something, but it must not be hollow. It must be deserved. So if you can't say, I see you're making great strides, then don't say. And please don't go to a club and see a speaker for the first time and say, I think you're making great strides. What? And say, boy, I could say on the hill yesterday, so where did I get that from? You need to build a motivational client. Their goals and attainable. If maybe it's that they have to work a little harder, maybe they have to do a little more preparation. Maybe what they would benefit from is taking your phone number and calling you tomorrow and asking you for some pointers and tips. Are you willing to do that as an evaluator? But that's how you build the motivational climate. I need you as an evaluator to evaluate the behavior, the speech, not the people. So I've been in situations where I'm quite tall, and I've been in situations where someone has said to me, well, if you wouldn't wear the high heels, we would be able to listen to you more because you're just towering above the lectern. Yes, she said that to me. She said, you're towering above the lectern and it's very distracting. I'm like, really? Thank you. Yes. You need to also recognize that people will be nervous, and you can comment on the nervousness, but then not let that distract you from the presentation that they made. Or they can be very nervous at the start, but after a minute they get into the flow and they do an excellent presentation. Don't talk just about the nerves, because that's so distracting. Because do you know how hard it is to overcome the nerves? You know how hard it is to stand up here and be nervous and continue to speak and present? That's what you get to acknowledge, because that's amazing. Isn't it?
Yes.
We need to figure out how to nourish self-esteem, and we've spoken about that. And the best way to do it is to end with a genuine positive. So if you do something to the effect of, I really liked your humor, it was very nice. However, and we never use the word however, this is a bad evaluation. However, your hands were this and your eyes were that, and you never did this and you never did that, but it was really good. That is terrible. That is a terrible evaluation, because I'm clear that it wasn't really good. You can acknowledge my effort, you can acknowledge the fact that my voice was powerful and held the room's attention, or that I used vocal variety excellently while my hands were all over the place and while I was nervous and I dropped my papers and my water all over the place. But don't give us platitudes, and please don't ever whitewash. Just give a whitewash evaluation, which is where somebody speaks for 5 to 7 minutes, and then you come up and say, and then you said you went to the river, and then after that you told us about this scarf, but then following that you shared with us your hair and your pants, and then you told us about your suit, and so move on to the next project. That's like a terrible evaluation, because the evaluation needs to speak to the behaviors, the presentation, the skills, not telling me what I said already. And know that the other people in the club have already heard the speech. And the speaker probably did it much better than I can do it in my 2-minute précis of the speech, which is what that would be. That would actually be the composition skill that we learn in primary school.
Question, and you are going to do all of that recommendation, motivational speech, etc. While you are doing, no, while you are, because for example, last night I evaluated the speech number 5, and you have different headings that you have to look out for. That may not necessarily give it up.
You get to do everything in 3 minutes. That's the beauty of evaluation. You get to pick which are the best 2 or 3 points.
Questions that are asked.
Yes or no, or no. You may not find you can do it. And so that's just, let me just show the speaker how to improve, and I think we've spoken about that a lot. You recognize the strengths, but important to say for the areas of improvement, here are some positive things to try. Present it in a positive way, but with suggestions and examples, perhaps things that you've experienced, like I said, or that you've seen others do. So, if nobody can see that. We need glasses, that's why you can't see. But this is an evaluation form that the point is made that in Toastmasters, when we're working on projects, we have objectives for the project and their guidelines for the evaluation. But we don't always have that to use, and sometimes it's not necessarily the only and the best way to do it. So this kind of evaluation form, which I'll share with Shanari, that he can share with anyone, just gives all the different things. This one, so this is my sister. Remember I told you my sister is a Toastmaster? This is hers. This is mine.
And there's one on that.
So this is mine. So sometimes when I'm called upon to evaluate a project or a presentation, or maybe even in an evaluation content setting where there are no objectives, I'll have the person's name and title, and then this is not their opening, this is my opening. This is how I organize my evaluation. So I say, here's what I'm going to speak to up here. And then under that, I have the positives and the areas for improvement. And then sometimes I'll put those as a heading, because those are the things I'm looking for in this setting. But sometimes I don't put anything like that. I just write down things as they occur for me. And then at the bottom, I have my closing. This actually says closing. I can read it, even if you can't. And I say, here's what I'm going to say at the end. So I take a positive and put it down there, then I don't speak to it in the body of my presentation. So I'm left with the areas for improvement and the very concrete recommendations that I'll make for each area of improvement that I'll speak to. And I may note down 5 or 8 or 10 things, but I only speak to 2 or 3 when I'm at the lectern, because that's all we can hear in a meeting, and that's all I can manage to do in a 3-minute presentation anyway. So I find this form really useful for me. If I use this and then I fill out the form that's in the book, because this one allows me to capture a lot of things, but if I then capture things on vocal variety with persons doing project 2, then I won't speak to it. But it does mean that I can say to the person, you mastered vocal variety even though you haven't come to that project yet. Isn't that self-esteem building? Yeah. It's not encouraging where we say, well, you're not learning this for another 3 or 4 speeches, but you're brilliant. So it allows me to put everything here and not be limited by what I see in the guide, but know that the guide is what I would use to help to do my verbal presentation. I'm looking at you, Rachel. Yes. I'm trying to get a sense of the time. Okay. So I want you to just close by speaking to the fact that the speaker has responsibilities as well in any effective evaluation. You need to communicate your goals to the evaluator, and I'm going to ask, and I hope nobody answers in the positive. I've given away the answer already. That's because I'm helping and motivating. do we just turn up at the meetings and the first time we see the evaluators when we're handing them our manual and saying, I'm doing speech 3? Is that what we do?
Yes, that's what we do.
No. Because if we say no, I tell them lie, I told you not to answer in the affirmative. But that's what we do. We really need to speak to the evaluator, ensure that we come. I've had situations where I'm sitting in the club waiting for the meeting to start. The meeting has begun, and a manual is passed over to me. I don't know who it's come from. I mean, I know I'm evaluating Joseph Taylor, but I don't know Joseph Taylor. And so when I see Joseph Taylor walk up, I'm like, oh, Joseph, right. Sure.
Preparation before. Who should reach out to who? I always think the evaluator should call the speaker.
The speaker has responsibilities too. So you speak to me. Speak to
But
your
if you didn't hear from him and you're sitting in the meeting, should you have made an effort before?
No. Your responsibility to speak to me. Come early to the meeting because I will be there. Come early to the meeting and say, here's what I was doing. We didn't get a chance to speak yesterday. Blah, blah, blah. Ask your VP Ed for the number of the evaluator. Once I'm on the agenda, your VP Ed got in touch with me. So get my number and call me. If you're calling me and I don't answer the call, I'm probably not. Call me back.
That's right.
Okay? But you need to speak to me and say, here's what we're working on. So you help the evaluator to prepare for their evaluation. And it's as simple as saying it to me at the beginning of the meeting, giving me enough time to ask you questions and understand. But the best way to do it is if you can do it before the meeting. You as the speaker need to prepare diligently. I hate when I come to a meeting and the person says to me, well, I just think of this speech in the way on the car. And I really, you know, when they told us that judges need to not have bias, I have bias when you say that to me. When you stand up at the lectern and I'm clear that you didn't even practice once, or that you just jotted something together and that's going to be good enough, I'm so sorry, but my feedback is not going to be as elegant or as nice as it would be if I said you prepare. So when you prepare with your mentor, I get to give you feedback that contributes to your growth and development. When you don't prepare, you're wasting my time. Make sense? Disrespecting me, your club members, the whole Toastmasters International, because it's about the preparation. When you're listening to the evaluation, you need to empathize with the evaluator. As an evaluator, sometimes it's not easy to say some things that may need to be said, but when you are sitting in your chair and you're going, I'm talking to you and saying, one of the areas I noticed, Rachel, was you use the stage a lot, and that was distracting, and you're going, I don't want to say anything more to you. It doesn't help me as the evaluator, and it's not actually helping you, because it's true. I found it distracting. Yes? If you can't hear that and go, well, I guess you're easily distracted. You know, but at least listen and take it into account, because there might be a truth there that will make a huge difference in your speaking skills. You need to help the evaluator to improve as well. You can share with me after, when you gave me the evaluation, this really helped me, but this didn't. Or I felt when you were at your seat, you were on the phone and I saw you texting, so I didn't feel that your evaluation really benefited from your full listening of my speech. That helps me to become a better evaluator. And you need to do the work. You need to do the work so that you can change and become a better speaker, because that's when the entire Toastmasters curriculum works well. Had a question?
Yes, on the point about, this, where the speaker should reach out to the evaluator. I remember when I was performing the general evaluator role, you mentioned in the booklet, it mentioned that you should encourage your evaluators to reach out to the speakers to learn their objectives. So I was just wondering about who should really do
Okay. All right. So who is However, there's a lot of benefits in doing it as designed. There's a little saying that says if you're going to climb Mount Everest, you're going to take on a guide, and the guides are called Sherpas. This Sherpa grew up in Nepal, climbing the Mount Everest his entire life, and if he says go left, what are you going to do? Left. Don't ever question the Sherpa. Yes, because it's life and death, and if we can take that on here, then it really does make a big difference.
Okay, one last thing. As you mentioned, it's up to you if you want to move on. But what happens, for example, you do your 10 manual speeches, but an evaluator may not have recommended that you move on, but you moved on? Would that prevent you from getting your designation?
According to Toastmasters International, no, it won't. Once you've completed the project, once you've done the work, made the presentations, and been evaluated, then you have moved through the curriculum. Clubs may put in other criteria. For example, the club that I belong to says your number 10 project will always be evaluated by an external evaluator or be delivered not in your home club setting, and then the VPA will sign off on it. But if you want to do it, then you will. This is a recommendation that we use because we believe that if you came to learn tweaking and someone says you didn't speak this good, then you should redo it. That's the underlying philosophy. But clearly, if you want to go ahead, that's fine. If you want.
We have a question from Emily online. She wants to know if someone gets a bad evaluation, and is it the GE's job to patch things up, to fix things from the lectern? So each evaluator comes up with an evaluation. Is it the GE's job to come up and general evaluator? Is it their job to come up and fix it?
The general evaluator does comment on the quality of evaluations and especially the use of the sandwich technique. I don't think the general evaluator should override or add to an evaluation and re-evaluate a project. I don't think that's good form, but perhaps the general evaluator and the evaluator could have a conversation afterwards in terms of their evaluation technique and approach.
And so, Madam Presenter, I believe it's good for us to note that evaluation is not only done during the meeting, but after the meeting as well. You can do the one-on-one. Because most of us, that's how we conceive of it, just during the meeting. But there is room, and it is recommended, especially if you have to speak to something that's delicate or significant, to do so on a one-on-one at the end of the meeting.
Yes. Thank you, Shirley.
So, does your club evaluate the evaluators?
The general evaluator gives their thoughts on the evaluation techniques of the evaluator.
I mean, after the meeting, because there's so much the GE can see about all the evaluators. But sometimes when you get feedback on how you do, you can improve as an evaluator. I just wanted to know if your club does a one-on-one with the evaluators after the meeting.
No, but we do have, periodically, we have a project in our club where we have people who are doing evaluations, especially younger evaluators, newer evaluators, and we will leave the room and they will share with a more experienced evaluator what they were thinking, how they were thinking of approaching it. And then when that project is running, we will then give feedback as a group as well. Like what worked and what didn't work in the evaluations, as we try to strengthen the evaluation skills of the members, especially the newer members, the newer evaluators. But I don't think that we have a practice of. I think that might actually be a good thing. But right now we're running the evaluation training evaluation, so we'll see. But I do want you guys to understand that being willing to stand up at the lectern and listen to someone's presentation and then give them feedback on the effect or the impact that presentation had on you and make recommendations for how they could improve their speaking techniques is an invaluable part of your Toastmasters experience and theirs. And when we all get comfortable with doing evaluations, and we do evaluations well, it makes a tremendous difference for the club, for the individual, and for yourself and in your life. So I encourage you to take on tomorrow, call your VPL and volunteer to do some evaluations, and let's see how we can transform how evaluations are conducted for us in the Caribbean.
Thank you very much, Bridget Levy. We do appreciate it. And from the response of the audience here and the people online, I can tell that it was a valuable experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good, Alice? Thank you. But Alice, your mic is not muted, so you can speak if you're able. We did not quite work that part out, but a message will be sent out to everybody. Thank you all for participating. I think we achieved the objective. Thank you.
They're asking when the next webinar will be.
Once or one Wednesday per month.
Can we get the chips, please, sir?
Yes. Refreshments are here.
Oh, you're doing everything. The next webinar will be on delegating.